The root of a chord is much the same as the keynote of a scale. It is the defining note. It's the point where we start stacking thirds. Just as the keynote of the scale is the place where we start calculating our arrangements of half steps and whole steps, the root of the chord is where we start stacking the thirds up from whatever this bottom note is. A major triad is a major third plus a minor third. A minor triad is a minor third plus a major third. A diminished triad is a minor third plus a minor third, and an augmented third is a major third plus a major third. All of these triads are made out of thirds, either minor or major. There's a stack of thirds. The bottom note is the root. In this case, it's a C. Well, sometimes the chords do not so conveniently arrange themselves so that we can only identify the root by rearranging the notes. We have to reconstruct the triad in its simplest form in order to find the bottom of a stack of thirds. In this first example, you have a D and a B flat and an F. Clearly, this is not a third and this is not a third. However, if you take this D and put it up there in that range, and now you have a triad, B flat to D to F. Now this next example is F sharp, D, B. Now this is not a third and this is not a third. However, if you take the B and put it down there, now you've got a third there. And if you take the F sharp and put it up here, now you've got a triad. B, D, F sharp. It's a B minor triad. You're going to have to do this a lot, so get used to moving the notes around by octave so they'll fit into nice little stacks of thirds. The preceding demonstration has shown how we can take notes that are spread out fairly far apart from each other. We can smush them together to make stacks of thirds. Now there's another element to this process which is much simpler and much more basic and much more important in a way, and that is the idea of inversions. Now this is a C triad, C, E, G. The notes are C, E, G. It's C, E, G no matter what order they're in. So if I take this note here and put it up there, now it's E, G, C, but it's still a C triad. Because if you stacked it in thirds, the only way to do it would be to have this one down here. So this is still the root of this triad, even though now it's on the top. This is called first inversion. To invert means to turn upside down. So with the bottom on the top, that's turning it upside down. So here's E. Put this up here. And now we still have C, E, G, but now they're in another order still. It's G, C, E. This is called second inversion. Now if you take the G and put this up an octave, now you've got a stack of thirds again, C, E, G. Still the same triad. All it's done is go through these different orders, and it's called inversions. It's very important to be able to identify a chord in which inversion it is, because if you can't tell what inversion it is, you can't tell what the root is. So, inversions appear, and in music theory, the whole business of inversions gets to be a very big deal because you get into figured bass, and you start putting little numbers under the chords to tell you what notes in the root and so on. It's very complicated. We're not going to have to do that far, but you should know what an inversion is, so when you learn it in Music 101, you won't be taken completely by surprise. Now you'll see a lot more discussion of harmonic functions later on in your exploration of music theory. There are many, many complications, ramifications, and applications of this concept. For the purpose of this course, however, you will merely have to be able to observe a harmonic progression and be able to identify each triad in it by function. In other words, you must be able to 1. Identify the key from the key signature. 2. Identify the quality of the triad, major, minor, augmented, or diminished. You'll have to identify the root of the triad, and from that you have to be able to identify the function. All this allows you to see where the music's going and where it's been and where it ought to be. Understanding harmonic functions is the first step in acquiring an appreciation of the large-scale structure of music. In other words, the large-scale structure of music is very much built around an established, time-honored chord grammar. For now, just learn to identify triads, and you'll probably start seeing recurring patterns that will become more and more familiar over time. Perceiving these patterns will enable you to begin participating in the game-playing aspect of Western art music composition. Game playing is a very important dimension of music composition. Game playing is about having expectations, about having rules which the composer more or less obeys. If you have this progression, you expect this, because you've heard that many, many, many times. Maybe there's some physics magic involved, but we've heard this lots of times. And there. Now, if we have this expectation and the composer messes with this, there's a surprise. It's a surprise because we're playing the game. If we weren't playing the game, it wouldn't make any difference what came next. If we do this, that's even more surprising. And so on. Understanding functions, understanding cliched functional patterns is the beginning of being able to play that game. There are many other games. So when you start to be able to play the game, then you begin to be able to anticipate large and small scale harmonic moves. In other words, you start to get into the composer's head. That's where all the fun is.